stacks on her mind. Grinding all day, hustle refined. Shattering ceiling, G steers and obtain. Boss is a title, wealth is a game. Yes, I can stay whispering here and there. Remember, listen as your day unfolds. Challenge what the future holds. Try to keep your head up to the sky. Lovers, they may cause you tears. Go ahead and release your fears. My, oh my.
Welcome back to the Hiring English Podcast. This is a show dedicated to making money conversation accessible so that hiring women can finally live the life they truly deserve. And if you've been riding with me for a while, you know something about me. I love connecting music with the topic we're going to discuss today. So I don't know how many of you remember this oldie but a goodie. How many of you remember this one? If you do, please feel free when you listen to this episode to post it in the comments. The artist is Des'ree, and the song is You Gotta Be. And when I heard this amazing guest was going to be coming on the show today, this song reminded me of her. The lyrics, you gotta be bold, you gotta be, fierce, right? You gotta be wise enough. All of those lyrics just made me think of this amazing woman. And I'm so happy to have you on the show. And I just want to say that this episode today is for the woman who leads quietly, but powerfully. The woman who actually sits at decision-making tables. The woman who actually understands that real power isn't always visible, but it's actually always influential. And again, my guest today, Sabine Soumare, the Chief of Staff and Private Secretary to the Lieutenant Governor of Ontario Health, she is that person. She operates at the highest levels of public service and constitutional leadership. She works behind the scenes at one of the most historic institutions in our province, advising, stewarding, and leading with integrity, with discretion, and with vision. So today's conversation, we're actually going to talk about what does actually leadership look like behind the curtain? I'm very curious. Are you? Navigating power, responsibility, and influence as a woman, which is something I know hiring women struggle with sometimes. Redefining success beyond titles and paychecks. And what do hiring women need to understand about proximity to power, to legacy, and to service? So Sabine, welcome to the Hiring Women podcast. How do you like the song? Have you heard it before?
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Are you familiar with the song with Des'ree?
I am so familiar with the song. I do actually very much love the song, so thank you so much for playing it.
Wow.
We did not speak to each other before you did so, but you picked the right one. I have to say.
Like I said, that was the song that came to me. I pretend to be a DJ on this show, so thank you for playing along with me. And yes, that's the song that I thought of when I knew you were going to be coming on the show. And, I'm sure many people who hear your title and think, wow, that's impressive. But honestly, they don't understand fully the responsibility and the complexity of what you do. So can you kind of just walk us through your journey? How did you actually end up becoming the Chief of Staff and Private Secretary of the Lieutenant Governor of Ontario? I feel like that's not the job you get to just apply for or, find on LinkedIn.
That's
so
true.
Tell me the story. Tell us the backstory.
It's actually very interesting because the current Lieutenant Governor is the first Francophone woman in the job. So this is history. And I've looked at my predecessor, and it looks like I am also part of history because I'm the first Black Francophone immigrant as well. I was born in France, Chief of Staff supporting the Lieutenant Governor. So we're very aligned in a sense that we know we came here, we know we have set the path for representation all together. I always say myself, this job is actually bigger than me. Because when I go home, I'm still a mom. I'm still running after my kids.
Right.
But
Probably
when
changing dirty diapers, right? Like,
right, exactly.
diapers.
Yes. So, but when I come here, I am indeed the chief of staff and the private secretary. I do have to, my duty is ensuring the office runs smoothly, that her honor is supporting into her, also her duties, which is constitutional duties, signing laws, which is ceremonial duties, making sure that, she gave the Order of Ontario. So all of these really high profile awards are delivered by the lieutenant governors, and some of the lieutenant governors awards as well. This is her delivering these important awards. And then the third is community, making sure that she's connected with the community, that she's embracing the whole community across Ontario and all communities, diverse, all of them. And that's my strength. That's where I come in place. The reason why I guess the two of us, or she picked me, I picked her, it's the timing. The timing was right. The person was right. And the trust was built. And this is about it. I think it's all about the connections and the time in your life. For 6 years, I have worked specifically on supporting women entrepreneurs. I have spoken in different instances, in different institutions to present how important it is to support women entrepreneurs. And that work, I believe, resonated and was found very interesting. And today I'm here not just to represent women, but to represent Ontarians and all communities and supporting her honor. So there is kind of a link between the leadership and what I have been supporting, the advocacy that I've done, and then today bringing all this advocacy into the advice I provide to her honor. Let's make sure that all angles of our communities and our beautiful province is covered, so no communities are left behind. And that's my role today.
I mean, you said so much in there. And one of the things that stood out is both of you are in historic positions, right? Her being the first Quebecer, or first
Francophone.
Francophone, she basically Lieutenant Governor of Ontario, and then you being the first Black Francophone Secretary to the Lieutenant Governor of Ontario. So
there you go. Here you go.
I had to go there. It's just sitting there looking at me. And I think about all the other things you said about how trust is built and how you have this ability to connect all these different parts of the Lieutenant Governor of Ontario's life, from the ceremonial part to just community, and then also too just supporting women entrepreneurs. I mean, there's never been more of an important time to support women entrepreneurs. So thank you for all that you do in all those areas. And I knew that definitely wasn't just a job you could just apply for. It's one that probably finds you versus you finding, you know what I mean? So, and one other thing that kind of stands out to me isn't just about the visibility part. It's the impact part, how you have this ability to not chase the spotlight, but, create all these amazing outcomes. So I want to know, at what point did you realize that leadership didn't have to look loud or performative, actually, to be powerful?
So a few things. First, I've never dreamt of being a chief of staff to a lieutenant governor, right? To be honest with you, I barely knew that was a function within a lieutenant governor's office until I knew more about it. But what I would say in terms of leadership is I've always had that. Even younger, I knew I wanted to help people. I knew I wanted to make a difference. I knew I had strong values that I will bring forward wherever I will go. Because again, as a Black woman and as a Black kid at that time, I don't know your generation and I won't ask your age, but it was different. It was different. As an example, when I started working for advising cabinet ministers 10 years ago, I was the only one sometime in the room, often in the room. And I thought, oh, and I do remember a little shout out to, I guess, Minister Mitzi Hunter, because I do remember her, right, in the room. And it was me being the advisor to cabinet ministers. And I was like, okay, she's there. And where are the others, right? So it's so important, this aspect of representation. And I say that to my kids as well. I always say, it's so important because when you see other people like you feel like it is possible. So into the entrepreneurial journey, same thing. If you see like a successful women entrepreneurs, a Black successful entrepreneur, you're like, yeah, that's possible. I can be an entrepreneur in the, I don't know, as an example, AI sector, because you've seen her, or in finance or agriculture. And that's an indicator that, oh, I can do it. So it's about you, what you have inside, and then you looking at others and dreaming big. And I think that's what my career is about. I've always said I will be everywhere I don't see people like me. So I've always tried to be in spaces where no representation of my people or I didn't feel represented, always. I would go to boards where there is no representation. Why? One, because I bring a different perspective. And then two, because I hope I can open a door that will stay open for the others.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
So this is the leadership, I would say, if you ask, and back to your question, this is the leadership style that I have, and especially as a Black woman, this is one that I want, a couple of things that I want to make sure I apply on my day-to-day leadership.
Well, you say that, and I just think so many women might feel intimidated in a space where they don't see anyone that looks like them, especially as a woman of color. And here you are running towards spaces that you don't see people that look like you, so that you can blaze a trail for other people to feel like they don't need permission to be there. Do you know what I mean? So we're again, so grateful when we see women that don't even realize how powerful it is just to have you in the room, so that other people can see what's possible. Even though you didn't necessarily dream of being there, that you're creating that for others is especially inspiring. And I just wanted to say, Mitzi is a friend of mine and a friend of the show. So
here we are. Hi, Mitzi.
She's definitely a friend of the show for sure. Now let's talk a little bit, change gears a little bit, and talk a little bit about power, because I think for many women, especially high achieving women, power can feel so complicated. We were talking about just being that person in the room where you didn't see other people that looked like you, and in those spaces, power can feel quite threatening. So you work in direct proximity to constitutional authority and tradition and governance. What have you learned about how power actually functions?
Well, I've learned a lot, and I have to say I learned a lot even when I started advising cabinet ministers, right? Because that was already, I was a political staffer, so I had to understand the whole machine so I can navigate it and advise appropriately, but also wisely. And today I'm coming back to the government. And of course, the power is, I would say, probably even bigger, because today this is the highest the lieutenant governors is the highest function. So I'm serving the highest person in the province. So that's really important, because the judgment I bring is important. The advice, the different angles that are not being covered will be important. But altogether, what I would say about me is I'm grounded, because I had to face resilience so many times. I came here 16 years ago by myself. I came from France to Canada by myself. I had to lie and say that I had friends, which was not the truth. But all to say I was just by myself. So obviously you have to learn even faster when you are in this situation, which I did. And I met with the right people. And then now I'm here today. But resilience is key. Humility is also very important for me. I don't take anything for granted, and I want to treat people the same way they treat me. So that's also another value that is so important, and especially at this level. Especially at this level.
And that's what I was going to say. So how do you exercise power in those rooms, and how do you what have you learned about how power actually wields itself in those rooms?
The most important for me is making sure that I know exactly why we're meeting. When there is a situation of power, I have to be prepared. I cannot assume. I cannot just guess. It is a question of knowing the topics, knowing what you will be speaking about. Because again, you will be an advocate. When I sit down with the Lieutenant Governor, with Her Honor, I make sure that I'm prepared to what I will say. Because the judgment, the advice that I will provide her will go a long way. So it's all about that. And then bringing your values into this conversation, bringing your open-minded as well, your different, again, back to the perspective. My predecessor might have done things differently or might have advised differently. But this is what I bring to the power, is me, my identity, what I've seen as well, because I have worked in different industries. So what I've seen, how it does impact Ontarians, how can we impact Ontarians, how can we be inclusive? Because inclusivity within the workplace is so important for me. So I bring that with me into the power. And I don't let the power, more importantly, intimidate me. Some people, many times at different instances, because I'm very confident and I have no issue, even at a young age, going to different spaces, they felt like, oh, I was probably too young to speak, but I would speak because I did my homework, and I would speak because I have something to say, and I would speak respectfully. So it's the combination of all of that I do navigate the power today, is communicating, learning the people, learning the person I will be meeting, looking at different point of collaboration, point of like commonality, and then move forward. Because at the end of the day, the way I see things is we are human beings. Even at the most powerful level, this is what we are, right? And we have to remember that.
Right. And I love the fact that you talk about, coming into the room prepared, knowing who's in the room, knowing what they're going to bring to the conversation, still being humble, but being confident at the same time, and trying to find common ground. And I think those are great ways and great reminders for women, because that does help your confidence. And knowing your voice is important, even though you're cute, you're humble, knowing that, it could be intimidating, but your voice is important. And so come with those values of why you're there. Like, what are your values? What do you care about? What's the common ground? I love that you're bringing all of those messages to our audience so that they go into rooms like that, showing up, knowing that they have something important to say as well. That's why they're there, right? Like,
and if I may add, sometimes you may not have nothing to say, and that's okay. And that's okay. I want to share that piece of advice as well, because sometimes we feel like, oh, maybe I need to be seen. I need to say something to be seen. No, silence can speak even louder.
Ooh.
Know when you have to speak. Know when you have to speak, and speak at the right time so people will remember, rather than there's something you say just to say it, it will be dismissed.
Silence is powerful, community. That is the money right there. I'm in the finance world. That is the money right there. Silence is powerful as well. So having something to actually contribute and not just talking for talking's sake, right? I love that. And I think that's actually a really important reframe for many of our listeners who might think that, I have to have something to say. And even if I'm not sure, I'll say something. It's just being deliberate about what you say is also powerful as well. That's time well spent. That's time well listened to when you're in the room and you know when you can offer value and when you can't. And I think many higher-earning women assume that power is about just the title or the income or having that recognition. But what you're showing us is that power is also about trust and responsibility. And I just want to know how you personally navigate just holding influence without that ego, right? Because we see that sort of way of carrying yourself very prevalent these days, right? Ego and influence. There's another path, and it's really interesting. How do you navigate that?
It's not always easy to navigate it, for sure. But again, I think I'm not afraid to learn, and I am not afraid to say I don't know. And that's not a problem for me, because when I stop to say, oh, I don't know, I need to learn, that's how you navigate. Because then people will look at you differently. Not at someone who is pretending, but someone who is learning, and it's not a sign of weaknesses. No, it's a sign of making also like one step ahead with someone and going with that person, learning with that person. And when you are at this level and you feel like I can do everything, I know everything, then you're missing so many, again, back to the angles, you're missing all of the angles. So the way I work, I make sure that I sit down with my team. I ask them, they have been hired for a reason. So I give them as well the time to speak so I can gather information from them and I can be prepared. So the way I prepare myself is also that, speaking to people, right? Valuing their ideas, opinions as well, which enrich me as a person. So it's not a one person. When you're at the power at the top, it's not one person. It's how do you step back and listen to what people have to bring, right? So that values them, that prepared and equipped you to be also a better leader and to have something concrete as well to bring at the table.
And as you were saying that, it made me think of being a great leader sounds like you need to know when you're the teacher, but you also need to know when you're the student, which is so essential in leadership that it's obviously something I feel like we don't talk enough about. So thank you for bringing this to our conversation today. The other thing I was going to ask you about, because many of the listeners who are listening right now are women who lead, some of them lead in large institutions like law, healthcare, corporate leadership. And these spaces, as you know, aren't necessarily designed with women in mind. And so I wondered, what challenges have you seen or experienced as a woman leading within these formal historic institutions?
It's actually interesting because often when in this case of your audience, they will have the title. They will have the title, they will have the experience, the knowledge, everything. That's why they were picked, I'm pretty sure, right? Similarly with me. But sometimes they will be diminished because it's not your time to talk, or because I'm not sure how much she can contribute because she did not speak at the last meeting, right? Or because a few years ago, we were rushing to hire people, even though the good ones, but then without the responsibilities that comes with it. It's like, I give you the title, shine, but not too much. So that's the soft part of it. But what I would say is take this as a leverage. Pick your battles. You have the title, which can open doors. So open these doors, but do it wisely and strategically. There are spaces where you need to say something, you say it, as I'm going back to my previous advice. Mm-hmm. And there are spaces there you just need to sit, learn, take notes, observe. and then act. My say is sometimes I rather act than speak. My action speaks to myself, for myself. And that's what I would say, because this is what I actually do. And this is what I've done in my various leadership role. I have been told at some point that you have the title, but it doesn't really come with the responsibility, right? Just so that or limited responsibilities. Didn't bring me down. I thought, okay, I'm going to use what I can use, and I'm going to build. And these actions that I will build and I will work on will shine by itself. So a lot of time is about that, because if we start being completely down or unsatisfied, or it is not going to help. And I know at this specific level, big companies, sometimes we also treat it as a number, like one of them, we have the VP title, but what does that mean? Well, you can't put a meaning behind the title just by your charisma, just by the way you will act, just by the way you will open doors, not just for you, but for others as well. So we can still contribute. That's my point. Once we're there at this high level position, let's also open doors for others. So that actions that at least will make an impact for the
So what I'm hearing from this is whatever the title offers, use it as leverage. Accentuate the positive in there as much as you can, so that you're still seen and heard. Figure out how to leverage that and try to take others with you, which I think is, and help them shine, uplift whoever you can that you're working with. Sounds like an amazing opportunity to.
Yeah. Oh, sorry about that. Sorry.
Exactly.
I was just about to say, and control what you can control, because we can only control what we can control.
Exactly.
And that's what will bring you to the positive, to a positive note, to an achievement as well. Because if you try to do something that you cannot control, that is actually bigger than you, it will drain you down. And that's when we start being like, oh, I have the title, I'm trying, but it's not working. But is that something you control? Or is that something that you're trying again and again and again to tackle? But there is ultimately nothing you can do. So you have to have that question. You have to ask this question at some point in your career, so you can, continue to grow. Because what I also say is sometimes you got to be selfish. And what you do it for yourself and for your own path. So, yeah.
I echo what you say. Just accentuate the positive, control what you can control. And I think there's so many women who need to hear that message, because, as you said, it can be draining when you feel like you've just been given a title and a pat on the head. So what advice would you give to hiring women as well, who feels that she has to prove herself constantly, even after achieving this success?
Trust me, that's something that I ask myself as well. But I stopped asking it because I understood, and I think that was after my first maternity leave, I understood that I have the experience, I have the expertise. So if one way doesn't work, there are always other ways to go. So for me, it's all about always learning, always challenging myself. When there is an obstacle, taking the time to rationally understand the obstacles and putting a plan forward, right? Not taking a no as an answer, but rather understanding the no, navigating the no, and putting things forward for the future. Mental health is a thing. Like we have to be honest. It is a thing. And we all navigate it differently. For me, I always told myself, I just want to be a positive person. So some days it's not the case, some days it is, but I keep in mind that I want to be positive in the work I do so I can continue to thrive. And working on ourselves is the best investment. Education, certificates, I recently did, now it's probably 2 years ago, I was pregnant with my number 3. And I did this MBA executive from Rotman. So, continually just challenge yourself, educate yourself, because that's what people will also see, right? When they hire you, they also hire you for all your qualifications and diplomas. And so you have to show them. So therefore, you have to invest in yourself. And I think sometimes people tend to like, oh, that's fine. Like, I have this and it's okay. Well, no, the more you have, the best it is. And the best you can also sell yourself. So that's what the advice I will give to women is look at your career. Are you happy? If you are happy, good. But if you have a plan, follow that plan forward and put all these actions in place so you can achieve it.
I want to pause here because some of the things, all the wisdom you've just dropped is so crucial, especially because how we define success. Success doesn't always mean more. Sometimes it's just what you talked about. It's investing in yourself, in your career, this lifelong learning. Sometimes it's clarity around what your boundaries are and knowing when to say no. And it's self-care as well. Because as you said, mental health, especially for women of color, it's real. So I'm so glad that you mentioned that. Again, something we don't talk about enough. And, this podcast is called The High Earning Women, but we also talk about redefining what earning actually means. So last question for you. In your life and career, how do you define success today beyond income or time?
How do I define success?
Yes.
That's a question that I get often. And I feel like I'm always surprised by the question, thinking, what should I say about it? What should I say? Because success, it's such a big word. But for me, it's about the impact. It's, I've been successful at any stages of my life. That's the feeling I have. Because my first, for example, manager position, I was like, oh, for me, that was a big success. But I didn't know that down the road, I will continue, right? So success just comes gradually. And we should always look further. Success is not the end. Success is just the beginning. That's what I would say.
Truth.
That's what I would say.
Truth. And last question, what gives you hope about leadership, about women, even about the future of public service?
What gives me hope is that I do see 10 years from now, I do see, let me put that back. So 10 years ago, I was entering rooms where I didn't see necessarily people like me. Now I'm back. And I do see the representation of various communities and our community, the Black community, shining brightly in various leadership positions. And I'm really happy to see that. I see it, and I'm privileged to be able to acknowledge that, to celebrate that. And this is actually what I've hoped so hard 10 years ago when I was saying, oh my God, I wish. And today we're here. So I feel like we're going into the right direction to answer your question. If we continue to open doors the way we do, if we continue to support our communities the way we do, because the only one that can do that is us. There is an opportunity. We connect with the right person. We've been here. We've been fortunate to be here. Again, back to the idea of the door. This door should always remain open. If I can bring someone with me and all of us can do the same, then representation is part of our life and we won't even have to think about it. So this is the future I'm hoping for my kids, at least, my 2 daughters and my son.
Sabine, thank you so much for this very grounded and thoughtful and powerful conversation. I really hope listeners take away from today that you don't need to be the loudest voice in the room to be the most influential. I know that's a trend these days, but that's not necessarily the way to actually get power. You don't actually need to chase power to actually hold power. And ultimately, success does not have to come at the cost of integrity or alignment. So to everybody listening, especially the high earning women leading quietly and thoughtfully and with a purpose, this episode was for you. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please follow, please rate and share the High Earning Women podcast. Remember, your proximity to power matters, so please use it wisely. I'm Jackie Porter, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much, Sabine, for joining us today.
Thank you, Jackie.
Honestly, this is such an amazing conversation. I wish I was able to take notes all the way through.